Good morning, everyone. Jim Clarke here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary in Central Virginia to share another contemplative focus with you. And the focus I want to share with you today is simply everything that is and everything that is not exist. Yes, that's singular. Living in the illusion of separation, we experience giving and receiving as two separate events. In truth, we are the giver and we are also the receiver. When you give, you also receive. The one is the many. So let's explore this contemplation for a few minutes today, huh? So everything that is and everything that is not exist. I left the plural off of that, which is grammatically incorrect, but in truth, it is correct because there is only one. And when we experience ourselves as separate human beings, then there's a division between one event and another because we don't see or we don't experience ourselves as the same source consciousness that's receiving what we're giving, or we are the receivers at source consciousness from source consciousness, either way. So that's really the essence of this contemplation. And along with that, of course, we must discuss how do you do that? How do you bring yourself to the experience of unified consciousness, where you can actually see and experience yourself as the same consciousness that everything is? And that, of course, is always meditation and holistic lifestyle, where your focus, which by default is going to go to the world outside of your physical self. And you're going to look out your window like the one behind me here, and you're going to see the trees, and you're going to see all the magnificent creations, the stars at night, the forests and the rivers and so forth and so on, that will entrain you to be mesmerized by the content, what we call the content of consciousness. That's all of the manifest reality. This is what's been created out of consciousness itself through a process of densification, where consciousness densifies itself into energy and from energy into form. So we are really consciousness, but we experience physicality and separation simply because we're made of the same stuff that everything else in manifest reality is made of. So you're pushing against yourself. Whatever you touch, there's a feeling of physicality, which makes it very real. And for us, as in this experience, it is real. And then you have also the separation in terms of coexisting with all different forms, living forms and non-living forms. So the illusion of separation is extremely powerful at this level of existence and this level of experience. So it's not very easy, and it's not the kind of a situation that you can reverse quickly, because the human body is the vehicle through which we're having the experience, and you must maintain that body in order to have an awakening experience and then to substantiate that experience from moment to moment to moment. That takes a lot of shifting and moving of what you think is real and what you believe. And in order to do that, you have to generate experiences, what we call peak experiences, in order to demonstrate to you the truth of what was just said. That separation is an illusion, and that indeed you are the same consciousness that all and everything is. So in order to do that, of course, you practice your meditation, and you have to be very devoted to the processes that are triggered when you do meditate on a regular basis. Because once you start that kind of a pathway, once you go on what we call the spiritual path, you're going to open doors that you never even dreamed of before. And it's going to start shaping your reality, because you're going to experience what was just pointed to in this contemplation. And once you have an experience, that speaks much louder than a concept or a belief about something. The mind will believe this and believe that, or disagree and agree, but it doesn't have the impact of actualizing an experience of something. So if I say that we are both the manifest and the unmanifest, and all of a sudden you have an experience of yourself outside of your body in a different form, or maybe no form at all, well, that would be pretty convincing, to you. And then you might come back into your human form and say, wow, what was that? But what happens in that process is that when you have such a powerful, insightful experience, it shifts everything about you. All of a sudden you realize, you may not understand, you may not be able to elucidate the details about what you experienced, but you know there's much more to you and much more to life than you ever could have imagined before, simply because you take your focus in duration and you move from the external to the internal. You go from what is to what is not. You go to the emptiness inside yourself, where you might tap in and experience the other side of creation, the noumenal versus the phenomenal. In my experience, this was an ongoing process for many, many years. It began with an awakening experience where I did have that experience. It was sudden, it was powerful, and it totally turned my life upside down, and it still does. And that's an ongoing process that I have been devoted to for 30, 40 years now, because the power of that experience and the bliss and the expansion of awareness that you get when you do tap into the truth of who you are at any level is going to far outweigh anything that you could have ever gotten from the phenomenal world, from the manifest reality. We can enjoy our five senses, and we can have experiences that we consider to be very elevating and good, positive experiences through our senses, but they're very limited in terms of how much they can deliver. And the reason for that simply is that they are generated from something outside of yourself. You take something to get high. You go to see a movie that's on a screen outside of yourself, and you're enjoying a play or a story that's being unfolding in front of you. So this is not you being that experience, it's you having an experience from something outside of yourself. Somebody says they love you, and you fall in love, but then you depend on that other, that significant other, as a big part of that love that you define and experience as love, which is not to negate it by any means. It's simply saying that it's not the real depths of love itself can only be experienced when you can experience the truth of who you are. Because in truth, you are love. And when you realize that and have that experience, nobody can ever take it away. You can't really give it to anybody, because they're the same as you. They're love too. They may not know this, and they may not be able to share their experience of it. But the bottom line is every single individual in everything, whether it's an individual or whether it's even an inanimate object, is the love that is inherent in consciousness itself. So the one is the many. In the truth, you are the giver and the receiver. So when you give something to somebody, say you give somebody who's on the street asking for money, or you just give a loved one a present or whatever, on the level of manifest reality, you are giving and they are receiving. This is the truth that exists within manifest reality. But the ultimate truth is that they are the same consciousness that you are. So consciousness is giving itself a gift. So, and this goes on and on and on in many different ways. It also is true in the negative. If you're hateful, spiteful, or negative towards somebody or something, then that's what you're giving. And you're giving that to consciousness. And so your experience is going to be generated out of whatever you give and whatever is being received. You're really telling consciousness, this is the experience I want. And so you're going to get it back. This is why the wisdom traditions don't bother with moralistic approaches to trying to get people to behave nicely, because they know that will never work. We're always capable of choosing what kind of an experience we want, but we're not equally aware of that ability, and even more so, we're not able to make that choice, because if we have never brought a balance to our experience as a human being where we have access and ongoing experience of ourself as source as well as being a human being, then loving people, whether they're good to you or not, is not a choice you can really make. It's you're too overwhelmed by the negativity of where your feet are. You're too densified and too unaware to be able to make a choice like that. Not that it's impossible, but it's very, very difficult to do. It seems to be contrary to what your instincts would tell you. So giving and receiving. Source gives and source receives, which is another way of saying we create our own reality in that sense. We flavor whatever we experience with what we're giving, don't we? If you're radiating love, then that's what you will have coming back to you. Even if somebody is negating you, if you're still radiating love, that's what you're going to experience. But in order to do that, you have to be that. And to be that, you have to substantiate the truth of who you are. And to substantiate the truth of who you are requires a dedicated focus on the process of growing into that truth. And you must shift the way you have defined yourself, the way you see yourself, and the way you experience yourself. And by doing that, you're going into yourself to open up and grow an aspect of you that has heretofore been hidden from you. And that is the key behind all wisdom traditions, is to manifest a state of being that allows you to experience yourself, what they would say, truthfully. In other words, there's no separation, and there's no difference ultimately between you and anybody or anything else in this world and all of manifest reality. And once you get that, and once you grow that experience, you understand what the whole game is. The play of consciousness is the pretense of being other than it is. And that can be as a human being, that can be as an animal, that can be as an insect, that can be as a mountain. So it doesn't matter what it's experiencing, it's all pretense, it's all a pretend game, because consciousness at its source is beyond experience. There's no positive and negative polarization going on within consciousness itself. It's unified, so there's only oneness happening there. So in order for it to experience itself and have this game of discovering itself and coming back to itself, it has to create a field of experience which allows you to experience polarities, the positive and the negative, the up, the down, the plurality and the singularity of all existence. So when you're in that experience and that's all you know, and this is how you perceive yourself and everybody else around you, then that's your truth in that moment. It's not the ultimate truth by any means, but it is truthful, and you do have to live and survive within that kind of an experience, which is not an easy thing to do. And this is what most human beings are doing on the planet today, is surviving. Because the tests are here, the world is changing, people are in upheaval because changes are coming in very radical ways in some instances, but they're always happening. Change is the only constant, is a phrase that my teacher used to use a lot of times. And if you can't flow with the change, then life is going to be very difficult for you, because you're going to be fighting with it. And that struggle, you can never win, because you're fighting against yourself. And that's part of the play of consciousness, though. It's not necessarily a pleasant experience at this level of the game. But when I say everything that is and everything that is not exist, I'm pointing to the singular, the oneness of everything. Because consciousness exists, and everything that consciousness creates is a creation out of itself. And creation cannot be different than the creator. It's one of the primary principles of conscious living. So this is really what I wanted to share with you today was meditate, meditate, meditate. Find a way to meditate that resonates with you, stick with it, and devote yourself to it for the sake of yourself. Just to manifest experiences for you to validate what is being said in such contemplations as this, not to believe it blindly, but to manifest the experience in somehow, in some way. When I first started meditation, I had breakthrough experiences that did validate things for me. Not every day, not all the time, but here and there, I knew that I was on the right path. I just didn't understand it until I found myself a teacher who could educate me about what is and what is not, and how the process of manifesting a truthful experience of myself works. And so that's what I wanted to leave you with today. Everything that is and everything that is not exists and exists both. So with that, I will bid you adieu until next Monday morning when I'll share another contemplative focus with you. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again next Monday morning.